I am so excited for today's conversation with Kamila Gornia. Kamila was one of my very first business coaches, 3, 4 years ago. And we've stayed in touch ever since and worked together. And Kamila, I'm so excited to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about who Kamila is. What do you do? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I am a business coach and business and marketing coach and strategist. So I primarily focus on helping other coaches, consultants, course creators, and service providers to launch, grow, and scale their business, often to six figures. And my thing is I really focus and prioritize simplicity and alignment with your values, your vision, your personality. So none of the like sleazy, pushy kind of approach that a lot of people don't really like. So
Right. I remember that was one of the things that attracted me to your work in the first place, was that it didn't have that sleaze effect to it. And yeah, you're really focused on who you are, how you best show up in the world, and taking action in alignment with that. So I love that about your work.
thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your own journey of self-mastery. Obviously, being an entrepreneur requires a level of understanding and self-mastery. So I'm curious what that's been like for you.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think that as any business, we go through a lot of evolutions, and I think the same has happened for me. This isn't my first business, so I think I learned a lot about myself in my previous ventures that I had as well, and the side hustles and things like that. And by the time I started my coaching business almost 7 years ago, I already had been thinking like an entrepreneur without really realizing it. So when I started my coaching business, I was like, okay, well, I want this to be an actual business. And I think for a lot of other people who are starting their first business, they're kind of like, is it really possible for me to make money online? There's a lot of that mindset stuff that needs to be overcome. So I already had that I already overcame that because of my previous businesses. So I think for me, the biggest shift, I think, and the reason why I think my coaching business was way more successful than my previous businesses was because I actually treated it in a different way. I was actually committed to it. I actually wanted to see something incredible happen out of it. And it came through decision. And I think mindset also played a huge part, and really surrendering is a really big part of it too. I'm a Capricorn, and I always kind of like want to do everything myself, and I'm like, I can figure it out. I'm just going to work really hard to make things work. And that works only to a certain extent, but after a certain point, to get to six figures or multiple six figures, like that's just not cutting it. And not that you have to work harder, it's actually not working harder or working more that makes a difference. I think working hard is important to make your first few thousand, but beyond that, it's less about working hard. It's more about strategy, mindset, like how you're approaching things. And I went through the process of like, I'm going to work super hard in my coaching business. And I did, and I hustled, and I was grinding, and I was doing all these things, and I got my business to multiple six figures. And then I burnt out. And at that point I was like, okay, this is not sustainable, because I don't actually have the life that I want. I have the things that I want, but I don't have the life that I want. And those are two very different things. Having a life means you are living and you are feeling a certain way and you're experiencing things in a certain way. And this is where I was also like, okay, I guess I'm not a super materialistic person, because I have the apartment, I live in the place I want to live. I have, I can buy clothes, I can buy all these different things. None of them are actually making me happy. So what does actually make me happy? And that's where I rebranded and created Heart Behind Hustle instead of being just Kamila Gornia. And the whole like journey, I think, of like, how do I make more while working less, and actually being in alignment with my heart, and serving, and just like making sure that I'm not doing things that feel not super great. And I think that honestly just happens in the evolution of any business. I think everybody goes through a lot of different ups and downs and changes as they go through. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. If we're coming from the heart, then wealth becomes easier, and it just becomes it's an experience rather than having all the things. And, if you have all the things, that's great. But if you don't have any time to spend with your things, then it's kind of a waste, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, I love that. So this terminology of self-mastery, I feel like it's the definition of success. Nobody really knows the exact definition of it. So I love to ask, what does self-mastery mean to you?
Self-mastery, I think to me means that you understand who you are and you understand like what makes you click so that you can use either the skills or the gifts or, the brilliance that you have inside of you to create what you actually desire in your life. So that's what I think it means.
I love that. I get a different definition every time, and they're always so accurate. So good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how has self-mastery supported you as an entrepreneur in understanding yourself and all of those pieces?
Yeah, and I think this is a really interesting question because I've learned and I've worked with a lot of different mentors. So obviously I've heard a lot of different philosophies when it comes to business and entrepreneurship and marketing and things like that. And I think it's very interesting because each person has a very different definition of this as well. Where some mentors I've had were like, it doesn't really matter what you think and how you feel and all these different things. You just do the thing and then you make money. And I'm like, cool, let me try that. But for some reason that like didn't really ever work. And I don't know if it's something that had to do with me or if it's just like that just wasn't in alignment. And then others are on the super opposite side where it's like everything you feel is how it, relates to your business. And to me, I've actually found that there has to be a balance of both. And that's kind of what I talk about with, the balance of masculine and feminine. I think we do need to have both. And every person has to find the right blend of both, I think. But anyway, I mean, I think honestly, it's being able to listen to what excites us, right? What feels good to us, what makes us excited, what makes us feel like we're looking forward to doing the business stuff, right? Like that, I think needs to be listened to. And typically that is coming from a place of self-mastery, right? Because if you're going to be trying to go against the hill, like up the hill all the time, I mean, in the beginning, I think that happens a lot because you don't have the skills yet. But once you're doing it for a while, it's like you keep the hard path, it can be easier. And to me, I think listening to myself and finding out like, okay, well, do I want to take this challenge because I actually want to build this skill and I'm curious about what will happen? And am I open to seeing no results? Or do I want to do this because I feel unworthy or because I feel something else and I'm just sabotaging and I'm, coming against resistance. So I'm going to do the thing that's hard and therefore I won't see results, right? So I don't know if you can see, but I see that there's a difference. So I think it's just being really consciously aware of like the decisions that we're making and having the right expectations or right potential outcomes. And sometimes that outcome is no expectation, no potential outcome. Let me just see what happens because I just want to try it out because it feels interesting to me.
Right. Yeah, I love that. And it gives this sense of possibility when you come at something with openness and curiosity and I just want to see what happens rather than I have to do this thing and it's going to suck and it's going to be hard. It might be hard, but if you come at it from that perspective of curiosity, it's also fun and it's inspired and you're doing it to move the needle forward. And I love that balance between the masculine and feminine. I think that's so important. It's not just rainbows and kittens over here. We have to do some of the work to get through to what we want, right? Yeah, it's so good. So good. So here at Rebel Radio, we love to talk about the activation of wealth. And I know that you're passionate about helping entrepreneurs make money, but wealth is another one of those words that's got this weird definition that nobody really understands what wealth is. So what does wealth mean to you?
Juicy stuff. And I love it. You've been talking about like wealth and money mindset with my clients too. So this is I know they really resonate with this. Wealth. I mean, I think there's so many definitions to wealth. I think to me, feeling wealthy and being wealthy are similar but different. So I think both are very important because it's possible. And I've seen this in my life where, I mean, I think logistically, like at what point are you wealthy? How much money do you have to have in, bank account, in investments, in savings? Like, I think those things are like logistically, that's how you can actually identify, like, are you there yet? And I think that differs to each person. I know when I started making decent money in my business, and I wouldn't necessarily consider myself wealthy, because to me, wealthy is like you have $1 million in the bank, then that's the traditional wealthy. To me, obviously, that's like, that's kind of out there, and maybe I just have very high expectations.
Everybody defines it differently, right?
Totally. But I started to kind of look at like, well, what makes me feel like I'm stepping in that direction? What makes me feel abundant? What makes me feel like I just have financial freedom? And I think financial freedom happens before wealth in some way. To me, wealth is something that's, once you have it, it's hard to chip away at it. It's hard to let go of it. It's kind of like a legacy to me. So at that point, you have a very successful business. You have the mentality of someone that it's just impossible to break that person back down and bring them back down to even if you bring them back down to zero, they'll get back right back up immediately. So I think building the mindset of wealth is the first step, because the way you think and the way you energetically are showing up are the things that are going to build the actual legacy, the actual wealth that you have, which is, to me, 7 figures plus. With that said, I personally started to set specific financial goals for myself that made me feel expansive and financially free. And to me, I have a very specific savings goal. And that is how much money is not just in my business checking account and all that stuff, but like in my savings account, my personal savings account. So I have a goal for that I'm working towards. And it's funny because I think just this year I started working towards this. I never even thought about that in the past. I was like, because all the coaches are like, just make money, and then you spend money, and then you make money, and you spend money. And it's very, surface, it's very short, and it's very surface level. And that didn't make me feel financially free, because I was always in that, like, okay, I have to invest more to make more. And it was, there was no, I don't want to say security blanket or anything like that, but it was, the mentality also kind of went along with that, where I was just constantly in that hustle space, right? Make money, spend money, hustle, right? Yeah. Versus I'm creating money and I'm putting it off to the side to create my legacy, to create something that I can, if I want to take a year off my business, I can. Because the truth is, like, I'm pretty sure most people are building a business to eventually not have to work ever in the future, or maybe work here and there, maybe just serve and do things that a lot of people don't want to do tech. They don't want to do, sales and things like that. And I think, I'm just going to say it, I think a lot of people, that's their ultimate vision, is to just serve, hang out with some people and like make money, but then knowing that they can do that because the business has supported them to be at that level. So, I feel like I'm veering off track now, so maybe I'll just stop.
No, I love that. I love the word legacy too. I think that's such an important word here, is that we're not just creating a bunch of money that we can go and spend and buy the things we want and do the things we want, but we're actually creating an impact in the world for future generations. I love that word, legacy. That's so good.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Good. So what is one truth that you wish every entrepreneur knew?
One truth that every entrepreneur should know. I think that it takes time, but it doesn't have to take a long time to build a business. And I think whatever time it takes you is correct. It's right. I think a lot of people get down on themselves, comparing themselves to others and thinking like, oh, I should be where they are, or I should have started already, or I should be, making a certain amount of money because I've been in business for a certain amount of time. And I think, we all have to go through our own journey, and comparing ourselves to someone else who has skyrocketed, I don't think it's helpful. I don't.
Yeah, that old comparison beast, right? Well, we don't see what's happening behind the scenes of that person we're comparing ourselves to. They could have gone through 10 years of hell before they ever had their success. And we don't know that. All we see is their pretty social media feed, right?
Exactly. And I think that's, and then same, like in my business, in my coaching business, I made 6 figures in the first like 14, 15 months. But again, like I had been making money online for like 5 years before that happened, in a different business. So I think that there's a lot. And then, like I said, for somebody that isn't there yet, the biggest hurdle to that is mindset. And for me, I already had the mindset of like, I know I can make money online. I know it's possible. And for
you didn't have to break through that one.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, it's like, is it really possible? And I constantly see people posting in Facebook groups when someone's like, oh, I made this amount of money. It's like, oh, did you really? Like, because they don't even believe that's a possibility for them, you know? So, yeah, I think mindset is so important. And obviously strategy is really important too. A lot of people are not doing things, you know, in the right order or in the, you know, in the way that is actually going to get them to where they need to go. I think that's another thing that's really easy to solve by hiring someone to actually show you what to do.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, you gotta have that mindset in place though before you can ever implement the strategy, because otherwise the strategy is just gonna fall flat.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think you work on both, you know, because
Both.
there's different mindset challenges that will arise once you're actually implementing. So I want to make sure that, you know, people don't wait to implement the right
Yeah,
strategy until their mindset is in check, because the mindset, we're always going to have challenges when it comes to mindset, you
yeah, we
know.
don't ever fully have it all our shit together, do we?
Yeah, no, we're always
Always something. Always growing, always expanding.
yeah,
Absolutely.
totally. So, you know, I think it's just like belief is the biggest thing. And I think belief also comes by you doing the work. So once you start making money, it's like, oh, maybe I can. And I think these two things work concurrently. And as new challenges arise and the strategy or in the business, like logistical things, the mindset is going to come up and then overcoming that so you can overcome the other. But I do think that it goes together.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, what's one thing that you've discovered? One thing, I love my one thing questions, that you've discovered about yourself along your journey that you'd like our audience to know?
What I've discovered about myself is that I actually like things to be simple more than I realized. Because
Mm,
in the very beginning, I didn't like things to be simple because I'm a marketing person, right? So we like to geek out on tech and funnels and all the, you know, all the things. And after a while, I actually realized that, I mean, a lot of these bells and whistles don't really make a difference, first of all, unless you're like making a crap ton of money. Um, and I also didn't really want to work that much. Like, you know, like, and it's so funny because when I was starting, you know, the whole message was, you know, hustle, work hard, you know, make your business your life. And I actually don't want to. Like, I'm like,
right?
I want this to be my life. I want to have a life. And then I can
Yeah.
serve my clients and love doing it. But, and like, you know, my clients are very much a part of my life, but I don't feel like I'm defined by my business. I define who I am by myself, by the things that I do, by things I do outside of the business. Like that's what makes me me. And um, I think it's something that not very many people talk about because it's easier to say be your brand and be your business, and it's just it is easier. You know, it totally is easier.
Mhm.
But I think there comes a point where you're kind of like, well, I don't want to do that anymore.
Work smart, not hard, right?
Yeah, so that's pretty much what I operate under now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that full-heartedly. We need to have a life too. We are
Mhm.
not our business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with everything that's going on in the world, 2020 and all of the chaos, if you could share anything with our audience about current events, what would you share?
Yeah, I would share that, you know, and I get these questions from my clients as well, where is it appropriate to share about things that we feel passionate about that don't have to do with our business? And I think I'll just address that first. And
Mhm.
to me, I think whether it's appropriate or not is up to you. Because if you feel extremely passionate about something that's going on in the world, and you don't like, the biggest thing is like, do you want to work with clients who feel opposite, like who don't agree with you? And if the answer is a strong no, then you should totally talk about that, right? Like, let's
Yeah.
deter those people from working with you. um, so yeah, so I'll just kind of address that. But then current events wise, I mean, I think that or my again, I'm just gonna, it's funny that I'm not a mindset coach, but I think everything comes back down to mindset so much. But I think the biggest thing is, I think it's okay to react to what's going on, but I think it's also very important to be proactive and to create a business that can withstand whatever is going on in the economy and the world and things like that. And it's also okay to, you know, shift things and to serve people in different ways that you might have not expected when that is what your audience needs from you. So I think the biggest thing is just being adaptable, being okay to
Mhm.
change and shift and not being so rigid, I think especially now is really important. I think a lot of people have learned that this year. There's been tons of people in the past that were very rigid, like things have to look like this and that's the end. And we're not willing to change things up, like we're not willing to go online or we're not willing to try different whatever. So I think that's really what it is. It's like experiment. It's okay. It's okay to practice non-attachment as well and just
Mhm.
serve. So yeah, that's kind of what I think is important
Yeah.
now.
I love that. And I think that kind of defines what being an entrepreneur is, right? Adaptability creates sustainability when you're an entrepreneur because
Mhm.
shit's always going to change.
The only guarantee we have is that things are always going to change.
Right? The only certainty is there is no certainty. I love that. Kamila, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure having you here. And as always, we end Rebel Radio with one last question. What do you dream of for the world?
I dream for everybody who wants to actually serve and has that passion for themselves to do something bigger than themselves, to find the courage to actually do it and to not feel like, being afraid of judgment or being afraid of rejection or anything like that, just going through and doing it anyway, because I think the rewards are so much greater than any potential things that might happen, which typically don't anyways.
Right? Oh, I love it so much. Thanks for so much for being on the show, Kamila.
Thank you so much for having me.